Hello and welcome to the Sabrena and Ben Real Estate Hour. Thank you for joining us on a rainy, damp Tuesday. However, I'm not complaining because the rain is cooling it off. I looked ahead, Mark, and it looks like temperatures this week are going to be in the upper 90s, almost 100 degrees.
Yeah, they're going to be quite a bit hotter than last week, but we do need the rain.
We need the rain, and it kind of cools it down a little bit. And the older I get, I'm not liking the heat quite as much.
I don't know that I ever did.
I'm getting where I like the air conditioning a little bit better. Ben won't be here with us today, and he called this morning. He's feeling a little bit under the weather, so we will miss him today. I'm not sure if he's had too many hamburgers and hot dogs or
breathing in smoke from fireworks, maybe.
I'm sure he had a big fireworks.
Yeah.
For little boys of his.
Well, he's here in spirit.
Yeah, he won't be here today, so it will be us, and then we've got a special guest that will be joining us shortly. I want to give some good real estate advice for anybody that's got their home on the market. If you are a seller and your home's on the market, I want to give you 3 ways that you can tell if your home's overpriced.
Okay.
One way, a true indicator to tell you if your home's overpriced is if you've had no showings, no activity whatsoever, no offers within the last 30 days. If you've not had anything going on, then you have to think, okay, because it's a hot market right now. As you know, everything we've been listing, we're getting a ton of activity on. As a matter of fact, what I'm finding is if the home's priced right and if it's ready to be shown, and I mean decluttered, and it has a very nice presentation, then we're finding that those homes are selling in most cases less than a week.
Yeah.
So if you've had no activity in the last 30 days, you need to reconsider your listing price. Number 2, if there's many properties that have come on the market, maybe even after you came on the market, that are priced lower than yours. Well, these are homes you're competing with. So you have to think, okay, this is my direct competition. And if they're priced significantly lower than you, that's going to have an impact on you selling your home. So you have to take that into consideration. Also, if there's a lot of new construction options around you, close to your location, and especially if they're offering incentives. That's something else you may do, though, to spark activity, and that's what we sit down with our sellers. We're always thinking outside the box and trying to think, okay, what can we do? What can we offer to hopefully attract a buyer and get them to come look at the home. Sometimes incentives are very effective, whether it be offer to pay some of the buyer's closing costs or even offer to pay a bonus to the agent. Sometimes that motivates the agent to show your home. But if you got direct competition like that, you have to consider that if you're a seller and you may need to reduce your price.
What is the median sales price here in Chattanooga in this area?
Right now it's about $150.
Okay.
So I think anything under the 200,000 mark is moving really, really good. And it's amazing how different the market is right now compared to what it was like last year at this time. It's really amazing. And I mean, these agents that only work exclusively with buyers, I don't understand that because the listings, I mean, that's where the activity's at right now.
Yeah.
It really is. So, and then another thing you have to consider when your home is under contract, it has to appraise. So that's something else you got to consider. It has to appraise for more money. And here are some tips in getting the most out of your price. One thing, really clean your house because it's all about the mood. When that appraiser gets there, you want him to see a spotless home, shiny countertops. You want it to smell nice, smell very clean. So put a little elbow grease into it.
50. Then a home at 300,000 or 400,000 is going to take a little bit longer to sell just because there's not as many people that are in the market for a home at that price.
Absolutely.
So even if the price is right, it's going to take a little while longer. And if the price is too much, then you're going to sit there without much of any activity.
Well, and in those cases too, you got to really focus on what your direct competition is. Because if you're in one of the higher end neighborhoods, and let's say you're priced at $350,000, and there's 3 or 4 other homes on the market, I think as long as you can price your house to be the most competitive in price, because it's already a struggle to attract those buyers because of the price range you're in. So you almost want to be the lowest price per square foot in that neighborhood, so that if there's anyone looking, they're for sure looking at yours first on the list.
And if there's a new neighborhood going in next door down the street, then you've got even more competition, because the new homes are so different from what was being built in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah,
It's hard to compete.
that's true. And any more people, they want to walk in and just be able to move in. They want to be able to walk in and just put their furniture in. They don't want to have to think about peeling off wallpaper, redoing flooring, and all this other stuff. They just want to be able. Everybody wants it stress-free.
Yeah.
So those are all things to consider when you are selling your home. And of course, Sabrena Realty, we would love the opportunity, if you are thinking about putting your home on the market, we would love the opportunity to come out and do a free market analysis. We'll come out, we'll bring information with us, showing other homes that you would be competing with, also showing homes that have recently sold. We'll sit down with you and help you determine the best list price. We'll walk through the house room to room and offer any suggestions that may help your house show better. So you need to call us. What have you got to lose?
Well, in addition to that, if somebody's not quite ready to list, but they think they may in the fall, or maybe even possibly next year, to have us come out and go ahead and give them some things. Hey, here's what you might want to do. Definitely don't put the money into that room. It'll give them a vision of where they're headed, and it could certainly help them. And they may find out that right now is a great time to go ahead and sell, even though they weren't thinking that it was quite the time.
And they may find that it's not going to be quite as laborsome as they were thinking it could be, because we use a very cost conservative approach when we make recommendations to our sellers, because we know we can't say, hey, rip out all the countertops and replace them with granite, because they're not going to get that money back dollar for dollar.
That's right.
But some things that really are appealing on a home that I'm finding with buyers is when those major, more expensive components have been replaced and they still have a lifespan left on it. Example, heating air unit.
Yeah.
Roof.
Roof is important.
Yeah, roof is very important. And with that, I want to go ahead and bring on our guest today. We have with us in the studios Greg Bolton. He is one of the owners of Roof Doctor, which I'm sure you've seen their trucks riding around town. I pass one all the time, which I can say you guys aren't speeding, because I'm always passing you when I see you. But we have Greg Bolton in the studios. We're so honored to have him. He has a family-owned business, I believe, with his brother, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you've been in business how long, Greg?
Since 1947.
Okay. And tell us kind of how that started.
Well, my grandfather was actually working for a roofing company here in Chattanooga in the 40s, and decided that he would just go out on his own, and started roofing at that time. And really, there was probably no more than 2 or 3 roofers in all of this entire area. You had company like Lookout Sheet Metal, I think, was around, and you had the Heltons, J.D. Helton Company. And outside of them, there weren't many of them around at that time. My grandfather, Albert Bolton, then started the Roof Doctor in 1947. And one of the things that I always hated, that I never did, and my dad never did really, is how he came up with the name of the Roof Doctor. And I wish a million times over I could have thought about asking him, how did he develop that name? Because now you've got everything as a doctor. Like you have a rug doctor, you have a pool doctor, we have window doctors, door doctors, all kinds of doctors in the industries of anything in construction. And nobody, of course, is as old as the Roof Doctor in this area. And so, but I never asked how he got the name. I just know when it happened.
He was on the cutting edge of that.
I think,
I bet
or something.
That was pretty interesting name back in the 40s.
It would have been.
Yeah.
It would have been. He actually, of course, the Yellow Pages wasn't here, and there was no other type of technology. He ran an ad in what was the Chattanooga Times at that time, in the news, or the News Free Press, that he gave a $50 reward for any leak he couldn't stop. Wow. And that was the foundation of the Roof Doctor.
How about that?
As far as I know, he never had to pay that.
Now, so I guess it's safe to assume that you grew up around roofs. So you probably, as a child, I would imagine you had a lot of exposure to the roof industry.
Yes, I've never had another job. I started going with my dad on jobs when I was probably somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. And that's real interesting too, because for years I would run into a lot of older customers that would say, you know, I hired the roof doctor 25, 30 years ago. And they'd say, there was this little kid running around on the roof. And then I would tell them that was me.
So you weren't scared of heights when you were a child?
Never was. And
Wow.
of course, now you can't do that because people panicky about falling in lawsuits, things of that nature. But it was common for all of us kids to go with our parents to roof, and we'd just work. All of us did.
Different time in our country.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you were talking, and before we started the show today, you were talking about how that you guys incorporated.
Yes.
And had to incorporate. Kind of share with our listening audience why you had to do that.
We did. What had happened is somebody has always tried to use, and people have always took a lot of liberty with using our name, and they would put signs on trees, or they would paint their vehicles, or they would do something that said the roof doctor, and it wasn't the roof doctor. It wasn't us. And years ago, I would just call people and tell them that they had to stop, and they did. But they understood our point of view. Well, then at one point, several years ago, there was 2 or 3 at one time doing this. So I called the city of Chattanooga to find out how many roof doctors were licensed in Hamilton County and the city of Chattanooga. And they said only the Boltons. So I said, well, what do I do about people that are using my name? And they told me that I had to get a lawyer and that I had to incorporate. So we had to incorporate so that now we still can't force people to not use our name. But now as a corporation, we have the option of just sending them a letter telling them to cease and desist, or they will be sued, which is something we've never had to do and don't want to do. But it was the only options. There was no other course of action against somebody using our name. But it comes up pretty regular.
You said you would have people just calling you randomly and complaining, I've got a leak, when it wasn't even you that.
Oh yeah, that happened several times. In fact, that was what started it. Is I would get a call and they'd say, people very angry, are you the guy that drives the blue van lettered roof doctor? And I'd say, no, we don't have a blue van. And then one fellow I met in one of his neighborhoods, he insisted that the roof doctor had done the work on his house. And I argued with him on the phone that I had no idea who he was, hadn't been to that address. And then when I got there, just as soon as I got on my truck, and he said, you're not him. And I said, well, I'm the roof doctor. And if you find him, tell him to call me, because he's not supposed to be using our name. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who he was or where he came from, but it does happen. It does happen.
Interesting, because you don't think about all that people think of doing. And as small business owners, some of the things that we have to deal with and some of the challenges, it's almost unreal. Now, you said that you are a family-owned business. You guys are not a franchise. You're local.
Yes.
So tell us, who else in your family is an active owner of the business?
Well, my brother Rod works with me as a partner, and my wife also does. She does all of our book work and all of our. She does. I wouldn't know if I would continue the business if I didn't have her, because she does all the computer work, all the bookkeeping, and everything like that. And it would be maddening to have to do roofing 10 or 12 hours a day and then come in and try to do book work also. Wouldn't be able to do that.
And probably because you are a local business, you're not a franchise, so you don't have all those excessive franchise fees that you have to pass on to your customers.
Big overhead.
Exactly. So
Right.
That probably enables you to be somewhat competitive in your pricing, doesn't it?
It does. Your biggest issues, and probably will be the biggest difference in pricing, is advertisement.
Yeah.
It's the heavy one. All of us pay pretty much the same amounts on workman's comp, general liability.
Oh, yeah.
That's across the board for everybody. So as long as the playing field is level, you can compete. The difference would be advertising. If you spend much on advertising, which we spend quite a bit, then the price of that company might be a little bit higher end.
Mhm.
And then somebody that, as opposed to someone who's only word of mouth, or maybe has their name on a tree or a light pole. So they're not paying the advertisement, and so their price might be a little bit less. So
Well,
that would be the biggest difference.
Well, Well, believe it or not, we get a lot of complaints about those signs
Yeah.
that are just posted up,
Mhm.
and particularly
Nailed
a
up.
lot of complaints. And that van that they park out there that I think's broken down in the East Brainerd area.
Yeah.
We get a number of complaints. So I'm glad that you're spending your advertising dollars a bit wiser. What are you finding are the best ways to advertise?
Well, word of mouth is always going to be the biggest one for us because we've been around for so long. And we were here before the Better Business Bureau, but if you go to the Better Business Bureau, you'll see we have an A+ rating from the time that they were there. And so that probably is number one. But then Angie's List is also a big one. And then also just if you go to the Yellow Page website, you'll find us. If you, and we didn't do this, Velux actually did this on their own. Velux put us on their list of skylight installers. In fact, I think the Roof Doctor comes up number 1 or number 2 when you try to get a skylight installed in Chattanooga. Velux didn't do that really by any permission by us, and we're not paying anything. They just realized that we were buying so many and installing so many that they made us one of their preferred contractors, and we didn't even try to do anything there. That happened as a result of the business. So,
well, I'm kind of curious. I know, like for us realtors, we have continued education. We have to do like an additional 16 hours every 2 years to stay up on all the industry changes, because it is an industry that changes and laws change and the way we have to do business changes. I would think every industry that's true to some extent, but I'm curious of what goes into certification for a roofer, and if you guys are required to do additional continued education, if it's optional or if it's something that you do, you choose to do. Because I think that's important, because, you know, when I'm referring somebody, it doesn't matter if it's a roofer or heat and air, I want to know that's a certified professional.
yeah.
I want to make sure they're licensed, bonded, and insured.
And well, those are the 3 that you want to talk to about most. And of course, liability and your bonding doesn't do a whole lot. The big one is going to be the workman's comp, because the health bill is a lot bigger than any of the others as far as like but as far as certification goes, I don't even know if there's a process other than by individual roofing manufacturers that they will have you do a lot of paperwork and go to like a half-a-day school sometime that you would be a certified installer of that brand, but not one that's necessarily promoted by the city or county or state or federal government that I'm aware of as far as a process other than insurance. For example, if you're going to do big jobs, commercial jobs, then you got to be a general contractor. If you have, like I do, a state remodeler's license, that just simply means I bid jobs, individual jobs, less than 24,000 or less than 25,000. If you get over 25,000, you're supposed to have a general contractor's license. And so that's the only difference there. So that would be the only way of, I'd say, judging any type of legitimate certification.
Now, is there any competition out there that you're aware of where they just don't have any insurance or anything? Is that a problem in your industry?
It doesn't seem to be as big now. For a while it was. It seems like most people have caught on to that, and the consumer has gotten smarter. The consumer started thinking, and this was actually promoted by a lot of the manufacturers and a lot of the companies, even people such as Lowe's and Home Depot do a lot of like promoting of the fact of making sure your contractor is insured. And so most of us, as far as I know, I don't know anyone, and there might be some smaller individuals that's doing it. And used to, people tried to get by with getting people to sign papers that said they're not going to sue or not hold them responsible. But that's the first piece of paper thrown out if you go to court.
Exactly.
So they're not going to recognize that, because the state laws are clearly set state to state on what you pay for workman's comp, the percentage, and that everybody has to have that. General liability is a thing you're supposed to have. Does very little. It kind of protects the property. If you run a truck through somebody's house, that's what your liability does. But the most clear danger is the worker falling off of a roof, and that's the purpose of workers' compensation.
If I am recommending, if I know one of my clients needs a new roof, What are some questions, important questions, if they're interviewing roofers or getting 2 or 3 estimates, what would be some important questions for them to ask a roofer to know that they've got someone that's got the experience and has the insurance and all
Yeah.
those important things before hiring them? Because I know it's not just price, it's some of those other things are important too.
Exactly right. And that would be probably, like I said, the first thing to make sure they're a legal company. That is that they're supposed to have a state license, and they're supposed to have the city and county license. And then, of course, the workman's comp and the general liability. So you should make sure of those documents. That's a fairly easy process. Your contractor should not be carrying those around in their truck. They're supposed to be placed on the premises of where their office is. And then you call your insurance company and say, hey, can you fax this information to this homeowner? They need this. And they can fax it or email the information of your insurance. The second step is just to find out how long they've been in business. And you can find out very quickly. You can just go to the Better Business Bureau. They do not do recommendations, but they can say this person's been in business this long and this how many complaints. Basically, theirs is based upon unanswered complaints. And then you can find out kind of there. Somebody says, I've been in business 20 years. They call the Better Business Bureau and it shows that they started a business in 2013. Then you got a lot more questions to ask, because where was their other 17 years?
Right.
And so
you want to make sure those complaints there are actually against the real roof doctor, not
Yeah.
that guy driving around.
Exactly right. Exactly, not the guy with the blue van.
Exactly. Well, we're going to have Greg join us back after the hour. So, and we got a lot of information. We haven't even scratched the surface.
Right.
We're going to get into different roof types, maybe some common problems that you're running across and things like that. Very informational, very good information for our listeners, and we appreciate you for being here. We will be back after the break. If you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home, please call Sabrena Realty. Our agents are standing by. They better be out working. But anyway, our number is 423-499-7780. That's 499-7780. You can visit our website at SabrenaRealty.com. And of course, if you need to get pre-qualified, call Ben or any of his team over at HomeRate Mortgage. They can be reached at 423-805-9100. That's 805-9100. Join us back after the break on this rainy Tuesday. We'll be joined with Greg Bolton from the Roof Doctor.
That's right.
Hi, I'm Maurice Lewis. When it comes to buying or selling a home, it's probably the largest purchase or sale of your life. It certainly was for me. I looked around, talked to a lot of realtors, then I met Sabrena Turner. That's when the game changed. One of the things that you look for that's most important is sincerity, understanding what are my needs, not what are her needs, but what are my needs. She showed me she had that kind of compassion. So I bought my home from her, and later on when it was time to sell, guess who I chose? I chose Sabrena Turner. She was there with all of the details, all of the follow-up, everything that you want from a realtor. That's why Sabrena Turner is my realtor.
Welcome back to the Sabrena and Ben Real Estate Hour. We appreciate you for tuning in today at 12:40 a.m. Hot News Talk Radio. We're here every Tuesday from 11 till noon, and we are back from break, and we have Greg Bolton joining us today from the Roof Doctor. He's the expert in roofing here in the tri-state area. And I'm just kind of curious, Greg, if you've experienced this, because back in 2008, when the housing market crashed, we were very fortunate in this area. We didn't experience the significant decline that a lot of other areas across the United States experienced, but we did feel an impact. There was no way. And I know that back during that time, as a realtor, we had to think kind of outside the box, and we had to be pretty strategic and start doing business a little different than what we were doing it prior to 2008. Some things we did, for example, we started listing some foreclosures, working with sellers that had a short sale and they were behind on their mortgage. And we did a lot of things like that. We got into rental properties, doing more investment properties and things like that. And I just wondered, your industry, I would think, because when the housing market's down, it kind of filters out and impacts every other industry as well. And I kind of wonder what it was like for you during that time. And if now, fast forwarding back into 2016, whereas the real estate market is booming right now, I would assume that you're seeing a significant increase in your business as well in terms of the activity and the demand you're experiencing right now. So I'm just kind of curious if that's kind of what you experienced as well.
I don't think it didn't affect us a whole lot, mainly for the reason we do not do any new construction at all. The roofers that do the new construction, then they had to start making other plans to get into like the reconstruction, like tearing the roofs off and putting them on. And then we also do a large portion of our business. Over half of it is roof repairs itself. What I found out is people will fix a leaky roof even if the economy's bad. Yeah. And what I found out to be more true than anything else, if you have enough bad weather, just hard storms, hard things like that, then you stay covered up with work. And then and so that's kind of what happened. Over the years, I found out that as long as it rains a lot, we never have a lack of calls. So it didn't affect us a whole lot when the crash happened in, I guess, or went way downhill in 07 and 08. Mm-hmm. It didn't affect us a whole lot. Droughts do. People tend to forget about their roofs when it doesn't rain in a long time. But realistically, what's happened in our area was more unique, as it didn't affect anybody a whole lot, is because we had the 2 tornadoes followed by the 2 hailstorms back in 2000, and I guess that was 9 and 10, maybe 10 and 11. I can't remember exactly. And the biggest problem we ran into then was we ended up with what used to be 10 or 15 legitimate companies working in and around Chattanooga, North Georgia. We ended up with 150 companies that nobody knew anything about.
Storm chasers.
They were everywhere. And but on the other side, it was kind of good they were here, because the severe damage, especially from the second tornado, happened all the way from down below Walker County, Georgia, went all the way through Hamilton County and into Bradley County, even taking, nearly 30 lives. So the damage was so big, so widespread, and so much problems with the hail that followed that it took us all probably 3 or 4 years to get it all taken care of. So the intense weather, in fact, I hope there's never another storm like that, not only for the loss of life, but I didn't like the stress that it put us under to try to get everything done and caught up with. So it was very difficult. But other than that, the economics of construction affects us a little bit. But if there's a lot of bad rain, people fix the roofs.
Well, Greg, you touched on something, the leaks. A lot of companies are doing roofing, and clearly new construction is a whole different animal than remodeling.
That's right.
We had an issue. We've got 2 skylights at our home, mm-hmm. and I've always heard that there's 2 kind of skylights. There's new and there's leaking.
Yeah.
And so we had an issue around one of our skylights, and of course, me being the Mr. Do-it-yourself, I got up there and, boy, I was going to fix it. And I think I made it a little bit worse. But you came out, and this has been a number of years.
Yeah.
But the issue wasn't the skylight. It was up the roof at a corner where the area of our home.
Downspout, the drain come out to the downspout right there, too.
Yeah, and it was kind of coming in, mm-hmm. getting under the shingles, probably mm-hmm. running down some felt paper for a little bit, then getting. And I mean, it was unbelievable. I never would have thought that that's what was going on, but you figured it out. So tell us a little bit about the process of chasing down a leak and how the experience in fixing that. It's not just grabbing a bucket of tar and fixing it. You've got to think about what's going on, what are the possibilities, where it can be, because I never would have thought that where you worked was where the water was coming in, and it's not dripped once since.
It has not. Fixed it, I have to say 100%.
Well, good.
Good job.
Well, good. Yeah, and that is true. One of the things that does happen, and it happens even among people that are roofers, is they want to rely too heavily on roofing cement and caulking, and they get way too liberal with it. It's all over the place. And what happens is it'll act actually as a dam. And if you put water, if you like seal off the bottom of shingles or the bottom of flashing, well, when that water hits at that point, then it's hit a diverter, and it will actually push water back up under the shingles and cause problems.
It'll help route it.
It will actually help. It'll actually help the water find other options in running off into the gutter. So the best thing to do is find what's causing the leak. Now, in your case, you actually had a corner where the flashing, and honestly, flashing leaks 100 to 1 over everything else. Flashing is unforgiving. You can't have any mistakes in it.
Does the flashing give out over time, or was it done wrong from the beginning and it takes a while to show
Yeah,
up?
it's according to what's made of. They use a heavy gauge metal, most time it takes many, many years before it will actually rust out. Aluminum will work, except for the aluminum flashing sometimes tends to want to get wrinkles and creases in it, and it's hard to get a really smooth job to where the water runs off smooth. And then I think in your case, you had a corner where the water was actually dumping out of the gutter right there too. So you had a collision of water in a place where the flashing just wasn't enough. And it was actually running under the shingles down to the skylight.
Yes, it was.
And
my wife let me know of it.
Yeah.
Each day, every time it rained, I was reminded.
He had the old bucket out trying to catch the little water drip.
Yeah,
Well,
if I was going to tell somebody anything, I would say, don't get up there with a bucket of tar or a bunch of caulking and just start covering stuff, because it generally will not, even if you get it, it's generally short-lived, 6 months to a year, and then you'll start getting the cracking, you'll start getting water from another source. And if water starts pushing up under the shingles, it starts rusting out the nails. And I think you had that problem too. Some of those shingles I was able to just pick up where the nails had actually rusted out.
Yeah.
So it does. It's just, it's better to not do repairs like that if you can keep from it. Find what the problem is. And like in your case, it wasn't the skylight. So I looked at the skylight and I thought it wasn't the kind of skylights that I like to use, but it wasn't the kind of skylights that leak very often either. And I looked at that skylight and I said, well, it's not that. So then I go from there up. Water will not go very far horizontally, but it will go a long distance vertically. So anything in that line straight up the roof, you just got to start looking for stuff that's not right.
Well, and in an attic, it can run down a rafter.
The felt, the decking, all that.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Now you said that, and I'm just kind of curious because you said you guys don't really do new construction at all.
Right.
Is there a reason for that? Is it just a different animal altogether, or do you just prefer not to do it and you got enough business doing repairs and stuff like that, reconstruction or replacing old roofs? I'm just kind of curious because I would think most roofers would want that opportunity to do the new construction.
Well, it's a lot easier for one thing, because you're not tearing anything off or having to haul anything off. So it certainly is easier. Now, the problem with that is, generally speaking, new construction pays a whole lot less than remodeling.
And it probably doesn't take the same level of skill.
It doesn't until you get to flashing and issues such as that. The roofing's a little bit easier. The only thing I can think of is my dad made that decision like really early on. So when I grew up in the business, and he had already made the decision that he wasn't going to work for builders. To be honest with you, he got mad. The builders, were not faithful in paying on time. And so he got tired of chasing builders down to get his money.
Yeah. But the power board won't take a mechanic's lien for your monthly payment.
No, exactly
you still
right.
Need paid. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, and at that time, we, like I was telling you before, we actually had two business in one. My dad, when he took over the roof doctor company, was already doing building and remodeling. So actually for years and years, we were just called Bolton Construction DBA Roof Doctor, doing business as roof doctor. What happened over the course of time, the roof doctor was not affected by the economy where building was a lot of times. So the roof doctor grew. And then when my dad retired, left it with just me and my brother, we really didn't have time to start doing room additions, decks and houses and things of that nature. So we did stay strictly with anything that pertains to roofing. So now anything that has to do with the roof structure, from the soffit, fascias, gutter, all the way to the point of the roof, and anything that sticks up out of the roof, we fix.
Now, what are the most common problems that you are called out to take care of? What are the most common problems you find on the roof? I know we touched on skylights already. That's got to be up there.
Yeah, skylights. Like I said, I did so many skylights that, like I said, Velux put me on their website, and we did so many of those. Which, by the way, they make a really good skylight. I'm not trying to plug them, but they've got one now. It's got a 10-year guarantee. Almost never, their flashing kits never leak. You get that little rubber washer between the glass. When it breaks down after 10 or 12 years, you'll see the fogging start taking place. But if it wasn't for that one little problem that nobody seems to be able to fix, they make a very good skylight. Chimneys are the other big one. Chimney faces two issues. First of all, some part of it gets hit with every rain.
Yeah.
If it's in the center of the roof, whether the rain's out of the south, the west, or the north or the east, it's going to hit something sticking up. So flashing ends up being a very big and critical part of a chimney. The other thing that happens is you have to maintain your brick and your mortar, or stone and mortar if that's what you've got. Stone is the hardest to work with. It wants to crack the most. I guess it's because you have big stone, little stone, big stone, little stone. For some reason, this concrete in and around the stone tends to want to crack. This is where the problem comes from. Most people will get up there to work on it. They will not see the cracks in the stone, so they start putting tar and caulking on the flashing. Well, the flashing wasn't an issue. Well, now it's an issue because they put a bunch of tar on it, but the water gets in that stone, cracks, gets behind the flashing or behind the tar and the caulking.
And now it can't get out.
It's in your house.
Right.
It only has one way to go. Gravity works. If the water gets inside, it goes down and it comes out somewhere inside of your house. So it's those are the two biggest issues. Brick and mortar is the same. Your crowns have to be made sure that they're maintained so you don't have big cracks in them. Wood, if you have a wood chase like a prefab, those are great chimneys. You just can't let your wood rot. You have to maintain the caulking and the paint, because if the wood starts absorbing water, the same process will take place. Water will get in through the wood, gravity again takes over, and it runs behind your flashing, and now it's back in your house.
Well, and when those were predominantly masonite, they were almost guaranteed you were going to have an issue at some point.
You know, back when I was a kid, they made masonite products that were different. When masonite, I don't know if they sold their name, sold their company or something, but they went to a fiber board that was supposed to take the place of the true masonite. And honestly, if you see true masonite, it's still on people's houses.
If it's been maintained, it's
right. But if you went with that next level, or the next time it came around,
generation,
it was a fiber, and it did not hold water. It could get wet, and it started absorbing water. The biggest thing that happened, and it's just that people in roofing and building just didn't think about it, when you cut a roof cut on something that's fiber, whether it be around a chimney or a wall, you have to prime that cut and prime the back of it. Because if it wicks water underneath, then you're limited at the time you're going to get. So that needs to be very heavily done at the time of either the installation or the replacement of the siding. You've got to make sure that you prime all your cuts so that when the hard rains hit, it doesn't wick up into the siding.
Let me ask you this. Talk for a minute about how important it is for an attic to be properly ventilated, because if it isn't, not only is your heating and cooling costs going to go up, especially the cooling in the summer, but that extra heat in the attic is that much more heat on the shingles. And is that an issue?
It's one of the major issues, because what happens is rain does not affect a roof. Cooler, damper climates, all of those do better on shingles. They're asphalt. They have a fiberglass mat with asphalt and gravel placed on them, if you're just talking about the roofing shingle. But what happens is they burn up. They get so hot for so long that they actually just burn up.
Brittle.
They'll get brittle. So you can imagine being in the South. Now, there might be climates where it's not as important, but in the South, it might be 90 to 100 degrees for 4 or 5 straight months. It looks like we're going to have one of those years this year.
I think so.
And so you got your attic heat cooking your decking, rafters, and your shingles from underneath. And then you've got the sun beating down on the outside, and no shingle can really survive that. And the South doesn't have that. We got shingles that's supposed to be guaranteed 30 years, but they never last 30 years because of just the heat. If your air circulates in the attic, and another thing, not just the shingles, it'll affect your decking. It'll dry rot OSB or plywood if you don't have proper air ventilation. It'll warp rafters, and you'll get the bowing and the movement if you don't have proper ventilation. So yeah, that is a very key thing. There's even a formula for how many square feet you're supposed to have per square feet that's in your attic. Ridge vents are probably one of the best things that's happened in years. People started putting those on there. They're not very wide, but they're at the hottest point of the roof, which is the center. The hot air rises. So hot air is automatically going to the center of the ridge and then out. Power vents work very well. The problem with power vents is they tend to last somewhere between 5 to 10 years and they will burn up. If you have if your heating and air unit is in your attic, it is really important that you have proper ventilation right above that.
Yeah.
If you don't, that thing never turns off. Your upstairs attic unit will continually run over and over and just continue to run. And so, yeah, really for the maintenance of a house, the roof, and your heating and air system, you're never going to have too much ventilation. You can be underventilated, but you're probably never going to have too much.
For any of our listeners out there that they know their roof, the age of it's on up there, let's say it's 22, 23 years, and they know they may need roof replacement at some time, I'm going to ask you a two-part question. Number one, what's the average cost of a roof? And I know that's going to be hard to answer because it depends on so many things, the pitch and the size of the house and all that. But I'm curious, what's the average cost of a roof, and what type of shingle are you really, are you recommending to your consumers?
Yeah, probably the most popular roof is your architectural shingles. The more moderate priced or medium priced would be the 30-year architectural shingles. Every brand pretty much makes one, and to be honest with you, they're all pretty good now. They in the South they do not last 30 years, but you will commonly get somewhere around 18 to 20 years most of the time out of the architectural shingles. If you can, the price on it will vary. Mainly, most of us are probably in the same line. If it's a house you can walk on, and you don't have to do a lot of scaffolding and harnesses and rope systems, which are mandatory and certainly well advised that people take very much caution on that. But you're probably looking at, to take a roof off and put a new roof on, you would probably be high end around probably $250 a square, or if you want to figure it, $2.50 a foot would be very common. That would pay for the material, that would pay for labor, that would cover all your insurances, that would control the hauling off the debris. That should take care of just about everything. So that would be a fair, maybe even a little bit higher, but that would be a good place to start. Yeah. Now, if you have the extremely steep pitches, you get up there in those 12/12s and above, you can add a little bit to that price, probably $20 to $30 a square.
Because it's more labor intensive.
A lot more labor intensive, a lot slower because you are harnessed. Everything's harnessed and scaffolded on those. So it just slows down the job a little bit.
You charge it more this time of year when it's 99 degrees.
I would love to do that, but we don't.
Yeah.
it just one of those things that we'd love to be able to charge more because it's hot. But I tell people though, commonly it's probably not the best. I would not be a good marketing teacher or a business teacher, because I tell people commonly, if you're not leaking, would you wait to October? So if you could wait a few months. So it is hard on us this time of year, and you do the bulk, but you learn to manage it. You do the bulk of your work from daylight to about 12 or 1. Anything you have to do after that, you do it in very slow pace and increments. And if you can work the shade, you work the shade, things of that nature. But you just learn to deal with it, and you carry a lot of water on your job site. So
you mentioned in the process of doing a roof, having to tear off the old and haul that off, dispose of that and all of that. Do you do many roof overs, or do you not recommend that? Does that have its place ever?
The only people that do that, and mostly it's a homeowner's decision. Roofers hate doing it because you can't see what you're nailing into underneath. If you got a soft piece of wood or something like that, you might end up with your nails wanting to back out because the decking was not hard enough to hold it. The biggest problem that happens is from the point of view of shingles just don't last as long. You're doubling your weight, you're doubling your heat, you're putting a lot of stress on your heating and air unit, and the shingles, you'll lose 5 or 6 years off of that. Most people that do put one on there, if the circumstances are very good, it does have a place. Let's say you have a 3-tab shingle that lays down really smooth.
Flat,
There's never been any leaks, rafters and decking's in good condition, and you feel confident that you can put a roof over it. You can't roof over another architectural shingle. It looks horrible because it's already uneven
bumpy,
because of the
yeah.
dimension. It's already bumpy. So if you have a particularly smooth roof, you can do that. Most people that opt to do that generally know that they're probably, it's a financial thing. They just really can't afford the little bit of extra money, which you'd pay probably $30, $40 a square more on a tear off.
Right.
So they'd rather save the money, or if they think they might be selling their house, then they know it's still going to last 10 years or longer. So it's no problem, but it's not recommended by many roofers because it's awful hot on a house.
Yeah.
Greg, for anybody that needs a roof repair or they need a new roof, tell them how they get in touch with the roof doctor.
Well, we're easy to find. We do have a website. You can Google Roof Doctor, or you can go to the Yellow Page websites and find us. You can go to Velux and find us. If you have a regular old-fashioned way, which is just a phone book, you'll find us. Yeah. So we're not hard to find, and most any of the supply houses around can tell you how to get in touch with us also.
What's your phone number?
My phone number, in fact, I'll give you two. My office number is this area code, of course, 423-892-9125. Or if you want, you can call me directly on my cell phone. I even have this on my truck. Same area code, but it's 488-6148.
So for anybody needing a roof repair or a new roof, they need to call you because we know you are the expert in your industry. And of course, for anyone thinking about buying a home or selling a home, call Sabrena Realty Associates. We can be reached at 423-499-7780. That's 499-7780, or visit our website, SabrenaRealty.com. And of course, Ben Phillips would love to do your mortgage for you. You can reach Ben or any of his team at HomeRate Mortgage, 423-805-9100. That's 805-9100. We'll be back here next week, 12:40 a.m. Hot News Talk Radio. Thanks for tuning in.